Everybody. Um, hey, how's it going? I just wanted to really quickly show you how we go about using our DMX software to program looks and scenes for our stage. Um, right now, we're in the middle of redoing our stage for Christmas, and I've been kind of a little busy, which is why I haven't put up a new video for a few weeks. So I'm going to show you our DMX program. And if you notice, we have a bunch of these lights over here to the side here. We're going to use these for uplighting on some trees. We've basically going to be making some trees out of foam board, and we're going to place them on stage, and this is all going to be uplighting on the trees. But all these lights here are usually the lights that we have on our trusses. So as you can see, we have these lights here in this screen up and down. These are usually our truss lighting, and this is kind of like a crosswash on the stage. We don't have any haze in the room, but I've got beams turned on just so we can see the colors and where they're going to hit, because it's kind of hard to see um, how these interact with um, the visualizer here unless I turn on the beams. So we have the beams on. We don't use haze. So that's what these lights coming across the stage are. These truss lights here coming up, these are our truss warmers. And then our lights across the top are these lights down here. These are some wash lights that we're going to use to kind of color wash the floor of the stage from the front. But again, on our current setup, these are all these truss lighting is actually going to be additional tree up lighting. We're still going to have our truss warmers, but all this is going to be tree up lighting. But for the purposes of today, I'm going to kind of use the same look that we've been using in the past, where we're using the truss lights to kind of backlight the band that's on stage, and just kind of walk you through how we would go about programming a scene. Um, so the first thing we need to do is this is all for patching here. So again, we're in the process of getting our Christmas stage set up, so this is all the patching for that. But I've kind of left them in the positions in the visualizer where they normally would be. So we're just going to be messing with um, these 10 lights here, our truss warmers, which are here sometimes, there we go, our band lighting, which is all down here, and then this is all of our house lighting, preaching lights, and we have a couple of choir lights for this coming series. So these are the choir lights here, and these are all the wash color lighting for the front of the stage. So that's where everything's at, just so you know. So the first thing we want to do is coming to the edit menu. If you look, we already have our we have a go-to look, which is our walk-in look, and then we have song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4, our sermon looks, our response looks, and then a blackout scene. So if we just want to black out the stage, we just click that and everything goes black. So the first thing we're going to do is just talk about how we go about setting up a scene. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to just do song 1. Okay, so I'm going to double click here. Song 1 for this week is actually going to be called Found in You. So I'm just going to label it just so we know what's going on. And for the time being, I'm going to kind of scoot this in a little bit so I can see this properties window over here. So we're on scene 1, and what we're going to do is we're just going to label this. We're going to label this intro. So this is the first part of the song. So as you can see now, it's intro. And what we're going to do is we're just going to basically go about setting up what this song is going to look like. So usually the intro for the first song, we still have our house lights on full blast, right? So the house lights are on. Also, we'll have our, if I can ever get this thing to work, there we go. We'll usually have our front washes on a particular color, so we're going to turn the dimmer up, like so. So this is where we start adding effects and colors. So we select the lights we want, and over here we have the faders, where we can go and look at the actual faders as they would be on a traditional fader-based console, or we can go to palettes. Now we're on the general tab right now, so we can only do color and dimmer, but since these are all Opti RGBs, if we were to just click over here to Opti RGBs, we'll have a bunch of other commands at our disposal. So as you can see, we have color macros and shutters and special effects and things like that. Um, so you can do all that too, but for the most part, we don't normally worry about strobing or shutters, so we always usually just leave it on this general tab and then select the lights we want and just do our color changes. So we're going to do this, turn our dimmer up, and then we're going to pick our color that we want. So Found in You is kind of an upbeat song, so let's start off with kind of like a more of a reddish color. And you always want to do this with the lights actually in the room, not through a visualizer like I'm doing here, because the visualizer doesn't give you an accurate representation of what that color actually looks like. So you always are better off doing it in the room with the actual lights. But for this purpose, we're just going to use the visualizer for today. So we got this here. We're going to zoom out a little bit, zoom in. That should be pretty close there. And if we spin this thing around, you'll notice that, see, as it comes down, it's actually brighter coming down to the back of the stage. But that's just the way that haze usually works. It usually looks better when you're looking at the light source instead of away from the light source. But that's kind of what it looks like. So we're going to spin this back around so we have a front on view. There we go. Now we're going to do our truss lighting here. So we're going to do our truss warmers. We're going to bring that up a little bit, and let's find something that's kind of cool. We may do this kind of like a yellowish color to kind of just warm the trusses to yellow. Again, this all depends on what background you use for your lyrics, because usually right in this area here is where our screen is, and we always have a background for our lyrics. So you need to work with whoever's running the computer to figure out what background you're going to be using, and kind of pick colors that kind of coincide with that. It's not necessarily a fast rule that you have to, but generally it looks better if you kind of color match everything. But say we're using kind of like a reddish gold, orange background. Those kind of all look pretty good together. And then just to start off, we're just going to use let's just turn these trusses on, these backlighting, and we'll just do kind of like so. This is just for the intro of the song. So this is as the band starts playing. This is what kicks in. First thing we're going to do is come over here now that we have our look, and we're going to change our fade time. So we want this to kind of be about 3 seconds. So we have minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. 3 seconds is a good fade time, in my opinion. We don't necessarily need it to hold any, so we're just going to turn the hold time off. So fade time is how quickly does it fade in, and then the hold time is how long does it stay on this step. So if you have multiple steps, so if you have where you're stepping through like a color change sequence, and you want to say, well, every 2 seconds I want to change to a new look in this one scene, you can set your hold time to be, okay, fade time, I want fade time to be 1 second, but then I want to hold it for 2 seconds, and then I want to fade in 1 more second to the next step, so on and so forth. That's how you do these fade and hold times. We generally only have one look per scene, because we're like, okay, this is our intro, we're going to stay here and we're just going to let it loop. So we're going to always have loop on, so we're not going to change anything. Release at end is generally, if you get to the end of these steps, if it's not looping, it'll actually just release back to something else you have selected. And I'll get to that in a second. That's basically how this works. So, Found in You. The next thing that happens is usually we have a down intro on this song, and then the next thing we have is kind of like a full band intro. So what we might do for this one instead is we're just going to duplicate it. So right click, duplicate, come down to here, intro, band, in. So there we go. So now we have two scenes that are exactly the same. So what I might do for this first intro, since the band is kind of down at this point, it's just an electric guitar or maybe a keyboard, depending on what instrumentation we're using, I may just take all of these lights, leave these on. I may just take all of these lights back here and just bring them down a little bit. Right? So it's not so bright. And then when we go into this one, they kind of rear in with the band as the band gets into full energy, we're going to turn on our lights all the way. So that's real quickly how we might do that. So intro is kind of low key, and then as the band comes in, we hit here, and then we're ready to go. Now, what you could do for when you get to the verse is you could just add a new scene, but it's going to be completely blank. What I prefer to do is I prefer to just duplicate my last scene, and then I'll just come in here and I'll rename it to verse. Make it verse 1. Oops. And there we go. Fade time would be the same. And then whoever the singer is going to be. So say the vocalist is going to be in mic position 2, which is this light here. So what I'll do for this scene is I'll just bring that dimmer straight up. So as you see, now this light came on. If we wheel around this way, you'll see that this mic position right here is now on. So that's kind of how we have that all set up. So that comes on for the first vocalist. Usually a 3-second fade time is good for that. Sometimes we might make it 5. Again, not a real long hold time. Now here's the part where it gets tricky. During the first song, by the time we get to the end of the first song, we have our house lights out. They fade down to 0. So what we'll do is we'll actually create a copy of this scene, and then we'll paste it. So this is copy and this is paste. So we'll paste it. This first one we're going to start at 0-second fade in, and this is where we don't want to have this light on yet. So I kind of did this backwards. So if it's okay, I'm just going to delete this scene for now, and we're going to do this the way I normally would if we're doing the whole fade down. If we don't have to worry about house lights fading, like if we're on song 2, 3, or 4, then this step is not necessary. But what I'm going to do is duplicate the scene again. I'm going to rename it back to verse 1. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is zoomed in a little bit. I'm going to take this here, make it a 0-second fade, and the reason we do this is for some reason there's a glitch in this software where if you do this and you do multiple steps, the actual counter whenever you go to live, it'll actually start at whatever this fade time is. So even if you start at 0 seconds, the timer thinks you're already at 3 seconds. So if we want to do a full fade out over 10 seconds, if we want initial fade in time of 3 seconds to get to this look and then a fade out of 10 seconds, instead of going 13 seconds over the entire scene, it'll actually start at 3 and then just do 10 seconds. So it'll only get through about 7 seconds of the second step. It's a little glitch. I'm not sure why. It's, you pay for what you get. This is a pretty cheap software. The software is free. The hardware is $200 for this to actually work your DMX lighting. I'm not sure if that's the exact price, but so we do this. We'll copy. We'll paste it again, and we'll set this up to our first 3-second fade in for the front band light to come on here. And this is typically also like if we fade in the first guy here, and this is on this song I believe the first verse comes down a little bit, so we may turn down the intensity of these lights if I can ever get this. There we go. Oh my gosh, there we go. So I may turn down the intensity of these lights just a little bit, and I may change the color just a little bit too, make it more of like an orange. Now this is all, we might also do this where we change these guys around just a little bit, make it the same color. So we'll do that, and this is our first look. So now here's where we started. We get into the scene. In the first 3 seconds we're going to have all the lights switch to this, and then our next step in the scene is where we're going to fade out these house lights just a little bit. So we're going to copy this scene, or this step, paste the step again, and then we're going to just change this to a 10-second fade. So that should be good, 10 seconds. And then we're just going to take our house lights here, and we're just going to bring them down a little bit. Again, this looks better if you're doing it in the room and you have time to actually sit here and see how much this is actually changing, because even though this doesn't look like it's changing a whole lot, in reality it's changing a ton in terms of how bright the room is. So you need to kind of figure this out in the room. So for now, I'm just going to say it's going to come down to 195. Let's make it 186. So to see how this works, we're going to start here and we're just going to press play. As you can see, 3 seconds we're in here, and now we're coming down to 6, 7 seconds, and you'll notice these lights right here are starting to dim just ever so slightly until we get down to our full 13 seconds. Now if you notice, it started to loop again. So whenever we have multiple steps and we want to end on this step here, we want to turn off the always loop, and we want to turn off release at end. So when it gets to end, it's just going to stop. It's not going to loop back up to this first one. Now again, this step here where we're doing all three of these steps and these always loop functions, this is only necessary if you're doing a fade out on your house lighting, at least in this program. In other programs, you can do this completely separately, completely differently. But using our program, this is how you do a fade out of those lights. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure what comes next after verse 1, so we're just going to assume that there's a chorus. I'd have to actually look at the chord chart to know, so we're going to say this is a chorus here, which we're going to say is, I don't know, 3 second fade. Again, we may also do a fade out here, so we might also do 0 seconds, copy, paste, and make this, a 3 second fade where we have the whole, all of our front vocalists come in, maybe not quite as big as the main vocalist, but at least have them come in. Any of our band lights will come in as well. Right now I've got this just pointed up at the ceiling in our visualizer, but it's actually pointed to a center spot on the stage, but I didn't want to clutter it up with all this stuff in the visualizer. So that would be our band lighting. And this is also, say, where our choir would come in at this point. Again, these are just kind of pointed up at the, actually I've got one point down at the floor, which is unusual. Again, this is my beginning process of setting up for Christmas. But anyways, so we'd have our choir lights come in just a little bit, maybe come in full, because they'll be kind of singing really, really loud. We'll change some colors around for this, make this more of a, maybe make it gold, bring up the intensity back up. Maybe turn this to like a kind of like a brightish pink. Again, this is all, you use the background of the lyrics and you use what it actually looks like in the room, and you make these changes. So you do that, and then copy that scene, paste it again, or the step, and then we'll do another 10-second fade. And then on this step, we'll take our house lights again, and then we'll just continue to fade these out a little bit. So we'll bring these out here. And again, I'm doing this kind of drastically. Usually this is a lot more subtle. I'm just trying to get through this as quickly as possible. And then we'll keep going. So we'll have a verse. All right, verse 2. Again, we're here, so we don't want to have a loop. So here, and here. We get to here. We don't want it to loop because we're going to have, multiple steps here. And I'm not going to worry about programming these right now, just to kind of bypass this. And then say by the time we get to chorus number 2 here, again, usually I'm duplicating all these and changing all the colors around as I'm going. I'm going to get to chorus 2. But say by the time we get to chorus 2, this is our last fade out. So we have a 3-second fade in, and then a 10-second house light fade. Okay, so say on this step, say these are the colors that we wanted for this entire step. So we're going to get to here, and we're going to actually have these faded out. And usually we're about somewhere around 80 for our house lights in terms of overall power, because we do want to have the room lit slightly. We don't want it to be completely dark. We do want to have just a touch of light, just so people can actually see where they're walking, because we don't have any lights like for on the rows to say, hey, here's the walkway, so people kind of see where they're going. So we usually leave our house lights about 80, maybe 72, something like that. And then we'll just go on through here. So now that we've done all this and we've turned off all of our releases that we need to do, the next part's going to be our bridge. And then from here, Once we get to the point where we are fine with where our house lights are at, from here we can always leave on the loop and the release, and instead of doing all these multiple steps, we'll just do a single step. So we'll do this. We'll have all of our band lights in at kind of like full. The main vocalist will be at full power. Choir will be kind of dimmed a little bit. We're going to have these kind of down. Have all these be kind of like the same color. Make it, just make it red, for now. And then we might have like, a bridge build where, it's down bridge and then the bridge builds back up to a chorus, right? So we're going to have this, and then from here we're going to change all these to full power. We may like make it white just to have like this big, huge, bright white color as our bridge build, and then we'll keep going with the song, right? So we'll do chorus, out, we'll have another chorus coming here, chorus final, and then eventually we'll get to a point where we have our outro slash fade out. Sometimes we'll have like an actual instrumental outro. Most of the time we end a song on a chorus. So we have our final note, and they're singing this last note, and then that's when the band's fading out. So this is usually like like a fade out. Sometimes we'll actually have like a true instrumental outro where they're playing like something, and then they end on a big huge power chord, but there's no singing going on. So then we'll do like two scenes instead of one. But we'll have this scene here. Gonna make this a 3-second fade, and then at that point all we're doing is we're just basically bringing out all of the front lighting, and we're just going to dim all of this just a little bit, right? Now at this point what I would do is I'd actually take this last scene here, copy this step, go to this scene, and paste it. So we're actually going to delete this first step. So now we're at and this is the same look at the end of the song. And here's where we would go, okay, next song is, this week is going to be Joy to the World. So we're going to say Joy to the World is going to be more of like a blue color. And then we'll just kind of change all of our colors around to blue. And this is going to become our intro for Joy to the World. So real quickly, we're going to go to our live setting for a second. And here's what it looks like for our chorus final, which for some reason is blank. Oh, because apparently I did not program anything for that. So we're going to just take this, duplicate, bring it back up, and we're going to name this just chorus final, just so we have something to look at for our live setting here. So here's what our walk-in looks like. This is not the actual colors we're using, but this is how it looks like when we go to intro. As you can see, everything kind of slowly fades into this. And then as the full band comes in, we have this uplight that happens. Verse 1, boom, there's that. The light comes on for the speaker, or for the vocalist, and then our house lights will fade here. As you can see, the scene's still going, scene's still going, scene's still going. And then we're stopped. So we're basically waiting for the chorus to happen. Then once the band gets to the chorus, click on chorus, which I guess I had a blank scene to start off with. If you notice, we're fading back up to where we're supposed to be. So again, this is where duplicating is really good, because apparently this first scene that I programmed had nothing programmed on it. So if we go back into edit, come to this chorus, click on turn that off, click here, see nothing was programmed. So that's the reason why it did that, and then it faded up into it. Instead of fading out, it actually faded into it. So this is where duplicating this duplicating scene from one to the next is where it's a little more handy, especially if you're gonna if you start a new scene, everything's black, so that's going to fade into it if you do a 0, 0. Now, if you're here and you do a new scene, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to have a step 0 that's completely blank, right? So, just to give you an idea how that would work. So here's our bridge. We're going to build into our bridge here. So if you notice, now we're looping. This is a loop. We're just constantly looping here. Now, if you get into the actual like rehearsal and that fade in is too fast or too slow, you could go back to edit and you can go to your scene and then you can change your fade time. But if you're in the middle of a live performance and you don't, because if you go to edit, if you notice, it'll just go back to wherever you were. So if we're here and we're live, so we're on the bridge build now, if we go to edit, it went back to whatever we had selected. So we don't want to do that during the middle of a live performance. So if you're doing a live and you realize that this scene fade in is too fast, you can click this down arrow here and it'll show you all these here. These two knobs here. This first one is actually how bright are all the dimmers supposed to be. So you can actually take this and pull it all out, right? So those are all the lights you change there. So we're going to leave that full here, but you can also change the speed that is. So this is normal, so we can make it faster if we drag it this way, or we can make it slower if we drag it this way. So now that we did that, we're going to fade into this bridge, and now we're going to try that fade again with this way off. So see how slow this fades in now. So you can see the timer here is going really slow now because we slowed it way down. And that's kind of how you do that. Again, we can make this really fast too, so we're going to make this super fast. So it's like, oh man, that was way too slow. We need to make this fade in a lot faster. So we're going to click on it now. Bam. There it goes. So that's how you can do this in a live setting. So we get to our chorus. Pull this back up. This is what our chorus looks like, and then here's our outro fade. So the band hits their final note, bang. And of course, where I didn't change any of this stuff around, I just changed the dimming value. This is just what the scene was previously. Again, duplicating your scene is the way to go. I was just doing it real fast and I wasn't thinking when I was doing this video. And then when we come into this intro, here we go. We're fading in here. Now, if you notice, this outro here is still clicked and this walk in here is still highlighted. And the reason that is, it's because we're not using this next button. This next button will actually close out this scene. But if you get to a point where you're just clicking through instead of using these next buttons, which sometimes this button kind of glitches out in a live setting. So I always prefer that people have their mouse exactly where they need to go so they can quickly, make any adjustments they need to make. So if you get here and you're at a point where like, okay, I have a few seconds, you can come through and actually turn this off. So you click on the play button here, turns it off. Play button here. If you notice, our house lights went away. And that's probably because they were not programmed in this scene here. Nope. So if you look at the edit screen here, our house lights were not programmed for this scene. So then we just bring these back up to where they were. All right. So now in a live scene, we're here at this outro fade, which apparently I didn't have programmed at all. Nope. So duplicate, delete. Yep. Take this. Outro. So again, this is like the trial and error process. So when you're going through it in a live setting, you're like, oh, I didn't do that. So now I gotta come back here. We're just gonna highlight all of this stuff and just bring it down, change it over to like a red, and it looks like we didn't do this, so we're going to change that over to here, bring that up to here, maybe make that red too, and then we're just going to take these, fade them out to black, fade out the chorus to black. Our house lights are still supposed to be on at this point, about 80. So that's kind of how it would look at the outro, and then we're going to fade it to our intro. So outro. So this is what it looks like at the end of the song. Now if you click the next button, you'll notice this outro closes as soon as this intro comes on. So we're going to click next, and there we go. and outro is closed. But again, in practice in this live setting, we've noticed that sometimes when you click next, all the lights turn off and then it comes back in. So it's a little glitchy. Again, you get what you pay for. It is a free program. So, anyways, that's kind of like a quick, video on how we do lighting. And I spent some time explaining some things, and it does take a while. Our lighting person who volunteers for us, she comes up there and probably spends 3 or 4 hours creating all these looks for the 4 songs we do every week. Sometimes we do a fifth song too, and then she usually spends a couple hours before rehearsal, and then she spends the 2 hours during rehearsal, and then usually she's still fine tuning it and tweaking it either Sunday morning, or she'll even come back in like on a Saturday or a Friday night and do some more tweaks to it, because it does take a while, especially with this program where it kind of glitches out. But if you're ever using it, this is kind of like a quick rundown on how we would set it up. So we do scenes for all of our songs. So here's our first song. We do every section of the song, we have a scene for it, and we make sure we go in and we program every light in that scene, because as you could see, as we're going from one to the next, sometimes those lights weren't working because I didn't duplicate the previous scene and then make changes to it. So that is a quick video on how we do this. I hope it was informative. I know it was a little bit longer than normal. But if you have any questions about this, feel free to contact me. You can leave a comment in the video, or you can email me at chris.campbell@calvarychristian.net. I will try my best to answer any and all questions. Again, this is a tutorial on how we use MyDMX for our stage lighting. Again, this is a DJ program that we're using for full church production lighting. So it's not the greatest in the world. It's certainly not high end. It's a very introductory program, but it's very cheap. And in the church world, that's a good thing sometimes. So we make do with what we got. So if you have any questions, again, give me a call, and thanks for watching.